So this is my first time doing this at Nativity, but today is my on-again, off-again sermon series called Lies My Pastor Told Me. Okay, I've been doing this for a number of years, so if you all want to look up all the other ones, they're online, scattered out there somewhere. The Lies My Pastor Told Me, and today's lie is all the things we learned about the Virgin Mary. So it's Lies My Pastor Told Me, the Virgin Mary. And what do I mean when I say lies? Well, here's the weird thing. When we think about Mary, we have this very firm belief, or at least most Christians do, that they really know her, right? They really know the biblical Mary. It's not an obscure character in the Bible. It's not like me saying, so, what does everyone know about Barnabas? Or Dorcas? No. If I say Mary, who here has heard of Mary, the Mother of God, Virgin Mary? She goes by lots of names. Okay, mostly everybody. But what we think of Mary and who we think Mary isn't really the Mary we find in the Bible, right? Because the Mary we think about is that Mary who goes ahead and is meek and mild and goes ahead and accepts things as they are, maybe strong, but she is that perfect person who goes ahead and gets married, and she goes ahead and has a child like an infant in a barn and doesn't even cry that night. It says so in Silent Night, right? And then when the drummer boy comes by later, still doesn't cry, probably because she's like the best mom ever, right? Okay? And, she is just this perfect symbol of womanhood, right? Okay. Most of everything I just talked about, never finding it in the Bible, guys. The Mary we actually find if we actually read the Bible, totally different person than the Mary the world thinks that they know. So let's take a moment and actually look at the Mary we find in the Bible. So, back in that time, people were married, particularly women, when they went ahead and hit puberty. You hit puberty, immediately your family looked for someone to marry off to. Meaning that anthropologists, historians are going to tell us that Mary is probably 13 to 16 years old, depending on her nutritional intake. So we are talking high schooler. So we have this high schooler who an angel of the Lord comes to and says, hey, I have a deal for you. You can be the mother of God. Okay? Now, we all have heard that story, right? We all know that beginning of the Christmas story. But let's understand what the implications of this really is. Outside of all the fear of being a teenage mom, of which there's a lot, in her society, since she is engaged, if she turns out to be pregnant, Joseph has two reasonable responses that culture would expect of him. He could do the manly thing, drag her to the middle of the square and start stoning her to death. There's some toxic masculinity for you right there. Or two, he could quietly divorce her, and then her dad gets to drag her to the middle of the square and stone her to death. Those are the two responses, meaning when Mary is offered this deal, the most likely outcome is her being dragged by somebody to the middle of the town square and killed. And yet, she says yes. Because she is fearless and she is faithful. She is breaking every norm of her society, and heck, a lot of norms of our society now, right? The question I've always had is, how many people did Angel Gabriel go to before getting to Mary? How many people said, oh, heck no, I am not signing up for that. I am out of here. Okay? I always wondered that. My confirmation, I was Episcopalian, so my priest hated when I'd ask questions like that during confirmation. But Mary was that one, maybe the first, maybe the 32nd, but was that person to stand up and say, I will put my life on the line out of faith. And she says why in the Magnificat. She says it because she knows that this is God's plan to transform the world, to rip the tyrants from their thrones, to feed the poor, to help the oppressed, to free those who've been thrown in jail unfairly. We know exactly why she's going into this deal, why she's putting her life on the line, why she's taking this risk. She says it right there. Don't believe me, read the Bible. If you don't believe me, just open the book. But that courage doesn't stop there. We all know that the next thing that happens is, and we'll hear about this on Christmas Eve, that they are called for the census, right? And then they go to the town of David, where Joseph's family's from, because it's of the house of David. You guys are following me in the story so far, right? And then she wanders around. She's looking for an inn, and can they find an inn? No, they cannot find an inn. One of these other moments, ask everyone, step back for a second, ask yourself a question. If she is going to the small town that her husband's family is from, why are they looking for a hotel? Right? If I went back to my small town where my parents were from, I wouldn't have to look for a hotel. I'd call one of my 4 cousins that still live there, or my uncle, or any number of family friends. And, in small towns, there's always someone who owes you some sort of a favor, and it's an easy favor. It's just like, hey, let me crash on your couch for a night. And yet, it's even more important back then, because if you read Deuteronomy, which nobody does, Mosaic law tells you, compels you, that if you have a family member in need of a place to stay for the night, you give up everything to put them up, even your own bed. And to not do that, according to Mosaic law at that time, is a sin. Which means everyone in Joseph's family was so not okay with the situation that they were looking for a hotel because they knew it. And all the hotels were so full that no one was putting them up. They'd have to sleep in a barn. That is fierce. Think about it. You're very, very pregnant, and yet you are still going to go to that little town where everybody is judging you. You, your decisions, your husband, your family, or your soon-to-be kid. And yet she marches on because she is faithful and she is fierce. Doesn't stop there. You keep reading through this. Mary knew. There's that famous song, Mary, Did You Know? Today, not only did Mary know, but so did Elizabeth, right? I love the song. It's a beautiful work of art. It is really touching. It talks to that incredible moment that almost every parent I've ever talked to has more than once usually, where you hold your child and you think to yourself, who will this person be? And well, that is really apt for all of us, myself included. Mary's like the exception on this because she knew. Mary always knew. In fact, most of the time, Mary seemed to be the only one who knew. She knew it when Jesus got lost in Egypt and preached. She kept it in her heart. She knew it when she went ahead and stood there at the base of the cross on that Friday. She knew it when she got everything together and all the apostles were hiding over someone's garage. Her and her friends and the rest of the women went out there to what they only could suppose was a group of armed men and asked if they could have the body. The thing, by the way, Pilate told them to kill anyone if they tried. Talk about a protest. Walking up to armed people and saying, hey, that body I know you're supposed to defend to the death for, can I have it? Think about the fierceness of that. Because those soldiers could have killed them on the spot and Pilate would have patted them on the back and said, good job. No one would have thought twice. And yet she marched up there, no weapon in hand, but courage. So maybe Mary is a really good example of what it means to be a faithful woman or just a faithful person. It's just not the Mary we heard about. The Mary we find in the Bible, the one who is that fierce, that bold, that courageous, that brave, putting her life on the line time and time again for God, and being able to do that regardless of the social consequences or danger to her, man, I wish that I would be that faithful someday. Imagine what Christianity would be if everyone was as faithful and as fierce as Mary. So as you go out today, take a few minutes. If you don't know the story of Mary, go read through it. She's amazing, just not the ways society told you. And in your prayer life, for the next week, take a few minutes, pray to God, and ask him to give you that same bravery, that same courage, that same faith, even a little bit of it that Mary had. Because man, the world would be better if we all did.